Hello and welcome to the Aaron Werner podcast, our first episode of 2026. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I think it's always fun. We start every new year with, at least I do, with just a lot of optimism and excitement and fresh beginning. And then come the end of the year, I'm ready to put that last year behind me and then start anew again. If that's you, if you had an awesome 2025, keep it going into 26. If you were like me and said, hey, 2025 is over, we're starting anew, we're running into 2026, strong and fast and excited, then welcome. And if you're just somebody who says, hey, it's another day on the calendar, then welcome as well. But excited to have Sophie back with us. Sophie is practice manager for a good friend of ours, Dr. Kyle Clutie, in Nebraska. And before I give her a chance to reintroduce herself, I want to bring everyone along as to why we're having this conversation. And so if I'm being honest, 2025, the first half of the year, I could do no wrong. The practice could do no wrong. We were doing well. We were firing on all cylinders. Cash flow was fantastic. It felt great. About mid-year, we started to really feel a drop in capture rate and sales. Patients were still coming in, but they were a little bit less excited to accept all the recommendations that we were giving them, a little bit less excited to explore out-of-pocket dry eye treatments and whatnot. And I learned last year, so one of the things I learned was that when things are going well, it hides a lot of the cracks. And when things stop going as well and there's a little bit of challenges, the cracks start to show a little bit more. And so it showed some cracks that we had in our systems and in our teams in the practice. And while I would love to say that the guy behind the mic does everything right and has no problems, that would be a huge lie. Right? We're working with people, we're working with systems. I'm not perfect, and so we had some challenges, and challenges that we finally said, hey, I think we need to bring in just an outside perspective, and so we started working with really two different coaches, and Sophie being one of those, because we needed to see from a leadership team in our practice what our strengths and our challenges and our weaknesses were, and before we can expand this out to the rest of our team. Like any good, rebuilding, we went through some challenges. We had some struggles. We lost some team members, and I look at that as all positive because we're getting a much better team. No different than any sports team. At some point you trade some players, you bring in some new players, and you just rebuild. So that's what where we're going through right there. And a big part of that, especially for our leadership team, was understanding deeper who we were as individuals and what we brought to the table as individuals. And I'm a big fan of what Sophie has been doing in the Working Genius. And so we've shared a couple episodes, one with me, one with Skylar, about our Working Geniuses. And then recently we brought Sophie in to work with our leadership team to really map the entire team. And so that's what I want to share with you all today. Hopefully we'll be a little bit vulnerable. I'm not going to mention any of my team members' names out of respect to them. But I do think it's important to know the roles they play in the practice and how the dynamics work together. And Sophie not only is an expert in this, but got to see it firsthand. And so she'll have some third-party perspectives on us. So I wanted to lay the groundwork. And then Sophie, for those who don't know you, give us a real quick intro into who you are.
I'm the practice manager for Dr. Kyle Clutie. We're at Good Life Eye Care in Omaha, Nebraska. So that's kind of one of my main buckets of my life is just managing this practice. We're seeing patients, managing employees. It's super fun, super multifaceted. There's a lot to it, and it gets crazy this time of year, so it's been a very fun few weeks. But another bucket that my life consists of is Working Genius coaching. So I'm certified in the Working Genius model. It's a framework that is more about efficiency than personality. It offers some personality insights, but if I had to summarize it, I would just say what this model does is it helps your team understand specifically where they're energized at work, where they contribute to a project, and how they can basically be most effective and efficient, but also be most fulfilled. And so that's a bucket that I really enjoy, is just walking people through that model, watching people light up, and helping people put language to things that they've sensed for a long time, but never really had the language to support that intuition. And so, yeah, that's what I went through with your team, Erin, was just this really fun kind of, it was like probably 60, 70 minutes of just going through this model, turning the conversation back to them, getting to hear where they feel it applying to their work day every day. So that's super fun, and I had a really great time. I loved working with your team, and I'm really excited to talk about it today.
Ah, perfect. What I want to do is share, because you said it's 60, 70 minutes with the team, and that was with the team as a whole. That was beyond the individual conversations you had with each of the team members, helping us understand who we are, and then exploring how we work together. So it's not just a one quick half hour, 30-minute or 60-minute conversation, right? This is a process. This is a journey. I think if it's done properly, and so I appreciate your help with that. So to lay the groundwork, and I will share. So if you're watching the video portion of this on YouTube, you'll be able to see this map that I'm going to share. And what we did is we took all of our team members and we added their working genius, their working competencies, and their working frustrations on a map, and just said, hey, how do we align as a team? And it's pretty interesting. So what I've done on this, you'll see that the title of the document is fake name, because I took everybody's names out except for mine. I put in their roles, and I think the roles are important, because it's they sit in different seats on the bus. And let's see if we can't minimize this so that they can see everything. Technology's great. There we go. So we've got our working geniuses: the wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And what we found on our team was that, let me back up on this team map. Under each working genius, you either have a genius or a frustration in there. There is a competency, and that's the part that you can do. You don't really get a whole lot of excitement out of it. It doesn't really frustrate you to do it. And Sophie, you taught me that the genius and the frustrations really aren't how well you do something. It's the energy you get from doing it. So I may be able to do something really well in my frustration. It burns me out. I can't handle that. It takes a lot of my energy. Whereas the genius part, I may not actually be really good at what I'm in a genius, but I get a lot of energy from it. And so this is a lot about personal drive and personal energy. And can I say passion?
That's what's great about it is.
Cool. And so anyway, what we did on this.
Sorry, there's a lag. What's great about it is it does speak to fulfillment and help you kind of identify areas that you are energized by this work, and there's also work in improving how you work in your area of genius. So what's cool is like people can identify, yeah, I'm super burnt out by this thing that I might be super good at, and this area where like maybe I feel I'm not as experienced in this area, but I really enjoy it. They can actually work on improving their area of genius and feel more energized by their work. And so I think that is a common misconception, is like you see areas where people might be like good, and you just kind of put them in that role. And so what's helpful about the working genius is you can rebalance people's roles based on actually where is this person energized, and in that way you just have a happier staff team. You have people who are actually doing what they genuinely enjoy and are energized by.
Yep. And we saw that when we broke down with the full team on this. And I think the first misconception that we had was that these were, it was very tactical. Like, I'm good at numbers. I'm good at selling, which is not what the working genius necessarily is. It was more about the pieces that go into problem solving, from figuring out what the problem is on the front end. And I use problem solving in a broad sense, not solving an actual, 1 + 1 = 2 problem, but just whether I'm creating a business, I'm creating a workflow, whatever we're working on. All right. So from the beginning of, wondering through the invention, discernment, galvanizing, all the way down to getting it done on the Tenacity side, where we got our energies from. And I think that was very eye-opening to the team, because they could see themselves in those roles, and they could see why they liked certain aspects, why they didn't like certain aspects, and why some of the conversations we have amongst each other can be really positive or very frustrating, depending on how we're the energy that we're giving and the energy that we're receiving from that conversation. So if you're listening to this, let me break down real quick what our geniuses and frustrations are. Again, if you want to go to the YouTube page, it'll be easier to see this. But under wonder, and wonder is really how you just kind of, dream and identify problems. So my tech lead and my doctor lead, this was their genius. This is my frustration. And I'll speak for myself. I can't stand blue sky sessions where we just, have an empty whiteboard and we start trying to figure out what possibly could be. To me, that's way too up in the clouds. But my tech lead and my doctor lead have this as their genius. And now I understand why they're always coming to me with big ideas that maybe haven't seemed like they've been completely thought through. But we need this, because if they didn't have their blue sky, I don't know as if we'd get as far as we are, or have the opportunities to go through. And Sophie, I'm going to go through these, but if there's any time you want to jump in, please do. So the next is invention. This is my genius and my doctor lead genius. And then this is my office manager's frustration. The invention is where we, really try to start solving that problem. They've identified the problem. Now we're trying to start solving the problem. And sometimes it's not a very logical way to solve it. Like, we're just trying to come up with different solutions for that problem. Discernment is the next genius. And this is my genius. This is also my office manager and my doctor lead's frustration. And Sophie, what I thought was really interesting about this one is you said this is just that kind of gut check intuition where you can't really explain why something's going to work or not work. You just kind of know it. And oftentimes you're right, which we found out really frustrates my office manager and my doctor lead when I just say I'm right, and I end up being right. And sometimes it's hard for me to describe why at the front end.
Yes, and that is, I wonder if that's, I'm sure that that's a personality thing. I think you are, and also just a positional thing of like, you're leading the charge, and so you're going to be very confident with your judgment. But also, like, it's funny looking at your pairing with the invention and then the discernment. Like, the thing about invention is those people really love a challenge. They love a problem. Like, they are just, as you said, you're frustrated by that blue sky, big idea realm of thinking. But like, when you have the person who is just like, oh, what about this? You're like, yes. Like, there's just an element of like, you really enjoy a problem. And when that's paired with discernment, not only do you enjoy the problem, but you know pretty much immediately, like, here's actually the very viable go ahead in terms of generating a solution. And so that was intriguing for me to hear too, that like there's a dynamic there with some of your staff that you're identifying even in that. But I think it's a big strength that you have that genius pairing for sure.
Absolutely. And we found out as we went through that, everywhere that we had these, somebody with this genius, it benefited the practice. I think it also helped understand, it didn't make my office manager and my doctor lead's frustrations any less with me and when I show up as discernment. But I think they understood more why, and it gained some clarity. And so it took the edge off the frustration.
Sure.
Now, what was really interesting is we had nobody under galvanizing. We had nobody who had this genius, and two of us actually had it as our frustration. So not only did we not have anybody who was strong here, we have two that really didn't like this area at all, which again speaks to why some of the things that we try to do in the practice don't really get done once we start the process. So what happens when you don't have a galvanizer?
Your team, pretty often there's kind of just a lack of excitement. Often there's also a lack of accountability. People with the genius of galvanizing are going to naturally really enjoy the process of the process. Like they enjoy taking this idea and moving it forward and actually ensuring that everybody is taking the steps necessary to move it forward. So it was funny because what I noticed even in our dialogue is it was you and your tech lead were the two people who said things along the lines of like, I'm not going to get excited that you do your job. You're doing what I pay you to do and stuff like that. And so that was funny because it's like that is showing like there's a level of frustration there of just like, yeah, and this is how you guys are wired of like you just, do your job, just do it. Yeah. But what a galvanizer does is they genuinely derive joy from helping people do their job, not necessarily like getting on the roller coaster with somebody and like holding their hand, but more just like, hey, I'm here if you need me. And, they know when somebody needs to be spurred forward, when they see inaction or like we're starting to lag in our excitement, they kind of bring that energy that actually spurs us forward and helps us get closer to the finish line. So it's a gap that you definitely feel when it's gone. Any of these are. Like when a genius is missing and you encounter this model, you're like, oh yeah, I've felt that for years. So yeah, it's, and galvanizing is a tough one to feel like you miss because it is a very unique level of excitement and energy that a person brings to the room.
Yep. No, and we didn't see that until we pulled this out. We actually talked about how we, about 6 months ago, lost another team member. She moved on, and she was probably the biggest galvanizer in the practice, and just brought that kind of level of excitement, maybe a little bit over the top for one person, but it definitely, she needed to bring that because it carried the weight of all the rest of us who didn't like it or anything else. And so, to your point, we definitely felt it. And then jumping from there to enablement, which both my office manager and tech lead had as their genius, and nobody had as their frustration. And I remember talking at the meeting about how this is one of the problems that we have in our office is we enable too much. And so as far as that, there really isn't the strong accountability that we want because we all are either a genius or competent in this genius of enablement.
Yes, and enablement is such a gift and such a quiet gift. Like if it's present in your office, I feel like it's so easy to overlook, and it's when it's absent that you really, really feel it. Because what you feel from people like your office manager and tech lead is they're just the very kind of people-oriented, intuitive presence. They just know like where to help and when to help, and they'll flex to whatever the situation needs. And so that enablement area, this is the part in a project where like you are very prone to stalling. Any idea can so totally stall at this point in a project. But if you have that presence of enablement, these people are just going to make sure that everybody is supported and actually enabled to carry that project through to the finish line. And so this is a very necessary step in that process. But yeah, those people are just they're kind of just gentle and intuitive and supportive. And so I think it's easy to overlook them. But as we talked about at your training, that's actually one of the things that crushes that genius is when those people are overlooked and aren't properly appreciated. And it's as simple as just offering a word of encouragement of like, hey, I noticed you did this today and that was really helpful. Thank you for doing that. They don't need a $300 bonus at the end of the month. It's more just like, hey, affirm me. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a really sweet thing. I tend to really try to drive that home in trainings because I think enablement is easy to misunderstand and easy to overlook. And it's one of those things that, like, if you see it in people, it's just a good thing to encourage because it is a very necessary presence.
Absolutely. And we'll get into what these geniuses crave and crush, because I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the last genius was Tenacity. And this was interesting to me because my office manager has this as her genius. But then my tech lead and doctor lead both had this as their frustration. And Tenacity is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to think of it as that last like 10, 15%, right? When you get almost all the way to the finish line and then you don't finish completely, you just move on to the next project, right? Tenacity is the person that gets that last 10%, make sure that last 10% gets done, rather.
Yeah. And what I heard yourself say that was funny is like a very tangible example of tenacity is the to-do list. And I bring it up all the time just because, like, anyone who has tenacity, if I mention the to-do list, they like light up and you can see it immediately because they just love a list. They love to check things off the list. There is nothing nearly as fulfilling as checking that box. And for the people who are frustrated with tenacity, typically, like, maybe there's a list, maybe there's not, but if there is, things just pile up and they might happen at some point. It could, it's the priorities are kind of just like not quite as there, I guess. People with tenacity just really, they're going to push things through. They really enjoy seeing things actually get done. And they are also, they just maintain the standard.
It's interesting you bring up the
desired
list.
From the beginning, like at the beginning of the project with the wonder and invention, there was a standard that everybody's hoping, like, our end product is going to live up to this idea. And tenacity is the person that ensures that the actual product, the finish line, is living up to the standard that we agreed upon in the beginning.
I don't just recommend Peak Pro to my patients. I use it daily, and so does my whole family. Honestly, it's one of those rare products my wife and daughters all love. So much so they actually fight over who stole the tea tree cleanser, the peptide cream, or even the hyaluronic acid. I had no idea this would be the case when I introduced them to the Peak Pro products. But I've learned they're a great company to work with, and their lineup covers everything from daily eyelid hygiene to deep hydration. I highly recommend checking them out. We've got a special affiliate link in the show notes, and use code Werner for 25% off. The way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo, elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, to hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. Yep, I like that. And it's interesting you bring up the list because my office manager absolutely loves her lists, and she follows her lists, and they get done. The the other two I have, one doesn't use lists. One has a ton of lists that were basically given to them, and the lists just start piling and piling, and now she has a stack of lists, and they don't work for her. And I found interesting about that is this isn't a knock on that individual, but it's that what works for me doesn't work for everybody else, and so I can't take my system necessarily and just plug and play it with another individual if that doesn't drive them, if that doesn't spark them. Now the team member I have that hates lists, loves color, and so recently, showed up with black sticky notes that you have to write on with a multicolor pen, right? And which to me feels like a lot of work to try to find the right pen to write on this sticky note, but it falls well within her genius of wonder, right? Because it's kind of big and blue sky and different and outside of it, and so it's interesting how people apply their genius to what needs to get done during the day.
It's so funny how, like, immediately you have language to be like, oh, that's why you do that, like, because what you were describing there for a second is, I think, a tendency that everybody has, which is just like, we assume that other people are going to operate the way that we do. And we assume, especially I think as leaders, it's easy to think that people are just going to conform to the way that I work and that I can actually, impose that upon them and expect them to. But there's actually a lot of power in just understanding how each different person works and giving them the freedom to operate in that space. And it's not, I say that and it actually sounds really lenient coming out of my mouth, I think. And that's not what I'm saying. I don't think that the standard needs to change, and I don't think we need to, make the working genius an excuse, because it's not. It's a tool, and it actually helps us to maximize the gifts that are present in our office.
My dad told me a long time ago, and I share this frequently, the worst advice anyone ever gave him was treat everyone how you want to be treated. And he said that's stupid, because there's only one you in this entire world. And there might be a couple other people who are similar, but there's only one you. So if you treat everyone how you want to be treated, you're probably going to treat everybody wrong. On the flip side, if you treat everyone how they want to be treated, it means finding out what energizes them, what drives them. Now, I understand that the idea was to say everybody wants respect, everybody wants to be treated with kindness, but I think it goes deeper than that. And the simple analogy that I always share is that when I go to a restaurant, I want my steak pretty darn rare, right? Seared on both sides, but that's pretty much it. If I were that for the whole table, maybe somebody else will be happy too, but the people who like their steaks like leather, right, and the vegan certainly are not going to be happy. And so what's important is that we understand what individuals need and then work to give them what they're looking for, and that way they show up the best for us.
A leather steak last week with my family, and I was ridiculed for the entire dinner, so that one hit very close to home. But yes, it's a great analogy.
Yeah, it's I have yet to have not have a reaction back to that analogy. So right. I think it hits home. Maybe if I showed up as just medium rare or medium, that's kind of boring because I'm very much at one end of the spectrum. Before we move on to the craves and crush buys, when you shared this team map with my team, what were some of the things from a third-party expert perspective that you picked up that were eye-opening to us, that you thought like we really needed to see and understand?
Great question. I was so impressed by the spread of geniuses just looking at your map, and considering, it's 4 people total on your leadership team. I would have expected more condensed geniuses in some areas and like more frustrations in others, but you guys were pretty well populated across that map. And I was like, wow, that's so strong. Just that even just in your leadership team, you have almost every genius represented. And I was just encouraged by, you know, like, I just loved watching people light up. I think one person in the room just said, like, when I kind of explained a genius, she was just like, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Every word that just came out of your mouth, like, that's me. And I love hearing that. And I think what was great was the spread is actually, there are two of you that are pretty towards the beginning of a project, which would be you and your doctor lead, our wonder, invention, discernment. You kind of populate there, and then your tech lead and your office manager kind of fall towards the end. And so I thought that was cool because there were similarities that a lot of you shared with each other, and also a lot of differences. And the differences can be really hard on a dynamic, because I mean, you said this at the very beginning of our conversation, just how some meetings can be really difficult, because and the reason for that is some of us are wired to think big picture, blue sky, and some of us just want to know, like, what do you want from me? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so what was great was seeing where each of you sit and kind of hearing as you dialogue about it, like, oh, this is why you are like this and I'm like this, and just watching kind of all these little unspoken dynamics actually have a language to them. I just think you have such a strong team here, and I was so encouraged by all those little light bulb moments that happened throughout our conversation. Did anything surprise you about the distribution of geniuses?
Nothing really surprised me. I think it gave me reason to understand more as to why, especially my doctor lead will come to me with ideas that just seem really big, and now I understand, why and where that's coming from. And just we overlap on invention, but she comes in with the wonder side. We overlap on invention, but then I've got the discernment side, and I didn't realize that, that not being one of her geniuses, in fact, it being her frustration, was a sharp edge for me when she'd come with these ideas. I'm like, but you haven't thought it all the way through. Well, that's not what she does, right? And so I was assigning or applying or putting in a frustration that really didn't need to be, because that's not what she was trying to do, right? She's trying to bring just big ideas, and so I think that helped me understand more of where she's coming from, and has helped me work with her better so that we can whittle through all the different ideas and find the ones that are going to work more, and then get to those quicker, which we've seen put into play. And so I think that was neat. You picked up on it that my office manager and I are pretty much opposites. We only have one of the entire geniuses that overlap in competency. Otherwise, we're the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And I it reaffirmed why I had picked her, years and years ago, as our office manager, because I really was looking for someone who would argue with me, fight with me, kind of, push back, because if two of us were exactly the same, who knows, we might just run headstrong off a cliff. And so I wanted somebody to kind of keep me in check, and so this really visualized that. My tech lead is Skylar, my son, and so it was interesting that he's very similar to her, but he has 22 years of life experience with me, and so he's been able to read my mind and kind of know how I think and navigate that. So it was interesting to see how he's brought his experience into it as well, in navigating his role in the leadership team.
That's beautiful. And that's where, you said we're going to get to the craves and crushes, but those really, the way that you communicate with anyone that just changes everything when you know, like, oh, my doctor lead just needs me to kind of sit with her while she's ideating and let her just throw out all these big picture ideas, because that is allowing her to kind of thrive in that space. But then my office manager is going to want me to tell her exactly what to do so that she can go execute and, work in that enablement tenacity space. So it is, that's really great that you're just witnessing how it's impacting communication even now.
Yes. Well, that's a perfect segue into the craves and crush, because as the the CEO of the practice, and ultimately I'm responsible. I feel responsible for everything, and the hardest part for me is shifting how I interact with individuals. And I'll be honest, it's a constant thought. And hey, how do I slow down? How do I stop? How do I interact? I would love to be able to say that it comes naturally. That you should just you should want to do the dishes, but I don't want to do the dishes. Right. And so I don't want to have to slow down a conversation. I don't want to have to show up differently, but I know I need to. And I hope that came across with the intent that I meant it to. But having the understanding the craves and the crush buys really helped me know how I can either uplift a team member or bring them down. And quite frankly, as we were going through these during the session, I saw how frequently I unintentionally bring somebody down and snuff out their light a little bit, because I'm showing up as me and not showing up as what they need. And so it put understanding the geniuses and then putting together with what they crave and what they're crushed by really helped to shine even more light on this. So if you don't mind, let's go through them one by one, and I'll talk about how we, I've learned to apply them. So on the wonder, what are they craved and crushed by?
Wonder craves consideration when they're talking, all these big picture ideas that they're pondering, or these big picture problems, I should say, areas that of opportunity or areas of, that need improvement. They're pondering all these, and when they kind of come out and verbalize that, what they crave is consideration. What crushes them is being dismissed. So when someone says, we don't have time for that right now, or that's just we need something more tangible and more go ahead, like anything that kind of inhibits their ability to just like put out all these problems that they're pondering, really does crush that genius. So where have you experienced that?
Well, I'll bring it from personal. My wife, this is very much hers, and she loves to just, in my mind, it's make believe. In her mind, it's just, ideal. And, what happened? What if we had this, and what if we had that, and what if we, got a motorhome and got to travel all over, and so the realist in me just said we don't have one. Like what? You're already planning trips in our head for stuff we don't have, right? And she said, but it's just fun, right? She's like, I know this, but it's fun. So what I've whittled that down to, at least for me, is just I need to be more curious. Just go along, just be more curious, right? Somebody has an idea, like just explore it with them. I think I didn't realize that just because they have the idea doesn't mean that they're wanting to go forward with the idea. They just want to live in the idea for a moment. Where when I get an idea, it's either, yes, we're going to do it, no, we're going to not. It's very binary quickly with that idea. I'm much quicker to act. And so for me, is that being one of my frustrations. My cue on that is just to be curious and kind of live with them in the moment for a little bit before quickly jumping to a go forward, don't go forward type of decision.
I feel like it's not set in stone, we're doing this. And that's funny that you would, an example I have is Dr. Clutie his top is wonder. And so he'll come to team meetings and just be like, I thought we could, do this maybe. And we have a whole team of like discernment and enablement is probably those are our top geniuses throughout our whole staff team. And so a lot of times we're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, are we actually going to change our office hours again? And we crush it. Like what we needed to realize is like, sometimes it's just a matter of like, he's actually actively considering this and it's not set in stone. We're not going forward with it. We're talking about where could we be down the road. And and so it's a matter of like actually extending that to the person and considering, their perspective. Because what's wonderful about Wonder is they're thinking about innovation. Like that's what's gonna drive you forward. That presence, having that in a room, somebody who's actually thinking about problems and opportunities, that's what's gonna advance you in anything, in any industry. These are the people that are actually keeping you in touch with what developments are being made in our industry and what are opportunities that we can take advantage of. And so that's very necessary to actually stay relevant, for lack of a better term, and stay in the loop on what's going on. But what they really need is just to be considered, and for people to allow them to continue just kind of throwing out these opportunities and problems. That is something really energizing for them.
And it's pretty neat when you give them that platform to do it, right? And I realize that some of the ideas, just my words, burn out on their own, right? Because they're not trying to do everything. They just throw it, they're throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks, and they're having fun throwing while they're throwing.
Yes. Yes.
So invention is next. So what are the craves and crushed by on invention?
Invention craves freedom. These people just love to have a blank sheet of paper where they can just write out all these ideas in response to Wonder. They're crushed by constraint. What's cool, I always mention this in my sessions, is the Wonder invention relationship is really cool to watch, because someone with the genius of Wonder will have all these kind of like big picture problems that they're presenting, and then the person with invention just loves the freedom in that the person with Wonder is providing, and they just like snap on to the problem, and they're like, okay, well here's like 15 things we could potentially do in response to that. Whereas you never want to, if you have someone with the genius of invention and you need them to come up with an idea for you, you never want to give them like 10 different parameters that you need them to fit their idea into, because they're just crushed by the constraint of that. They're not going to actually be able to ideate when there's like, oh, it has to like, I need it to be within this time frame or this budget or this, they're just not going to be able to actually generate all the ideas that they would like when it's in that headspace. So there are other geniuses that, they would love that constraint. They would love just a list of everything you want, but that is not invention. Mm-hmm. What they really need is freedom. So this is your genius, so I would love to hear where you feel that.
You hit it spot on. I love freedom. I don't like being told what I can and can't do. I think I've naturally grounded myself, and I put my own guardrails up, but I don't like having guardrails put upon me. Where I've learned this the most is my office manager. This is her frustration. So when I work with her, I've learned not to speak in just wide open, because she wants the guardrails. She wants to know where the limits are, what the rules of the game are. And so I've learned when I'm trying to engage her in with what I'm doing under this genius, that I have to tailor what I share so that it feels like it's not just completely going to blow everything up. That it's going to work within the confines and the systems that we have, because that's where she works the best. She likes having those set guardrails. She's the list person, the checkoff person. This is the policy. This is the rules. And so if I'm going to break any of those, I have to be very aware that that's going to be a challenge on her. And so I've learned, when to share and how much to share when bringing her into that conversation.
Curious to hear too if you feel this with your Dr. Lee, because she has the Wonder and invention, where you kind of see that pairing play out with her.
Oh, definitely. It's I see them work through well, and what's interesting is she sees the problem, she comes up with ideas for the problem, but then her discernment is her frustration. And so I'm quick to bring that into the discussion. And so it's we overlap very well on the invention, on trying to solve things. And if you get us on that platform, we can waste too much time just coming up with ideas. And but then so it's kind of neat to see where she'll come up with different things that she wants to trial and change, and she's brought a whole lot of different things to the practice that I never would have thought to look into. And then on the invention, I've learned that we need to slow down once we just come up with ideas to solve the problem, not just jumping into solving them quickly, but slowing the process down to make sure that it's actually going to work, that we've thought through the pluses and minuses, and so it comes up with the outcome that we're looking for, not just hey, let's try this.
And that's tough. It's tough with discernment to not immediately be like, well, that's not going to work. But that's like extending the freedom to the inventor is it's a discipline, but it is so. They just shine, they just light up when they just get to talk about all the different things that they're thinking about. I would love to talk about discernment though, because what's interesting is just how if we're kind of breaking the working genius into triads, you have wonder invention is kind of like that ideation stage, then discernment and galvanizing in the middle, and then enablement, tenacity, and like that execution phase. And I feel like you're very strong in the first phase and the third phase, kind of that ideation and then execution. And it's that middle phase that you are the sole discerner on your leadership team, and then there's no galvanizing. And so it's kind of like that's a lot on you to just like activate an idea and get it moving. What discernment craves is trust, and they're crushed by prove it. So you mentioned this earlier, but discernment is just a very intuitive process that just you naturally often know what's going to work and what's going to not, and what's actually going to last down the road. What idea is on the back end, a few years down the road, what's actually going to be benefiting us still. And sometimes that's something that you can't support with data. It's just something that you know intuitively. And so you just long to be trusted in that way. But when somebody asks you to prove that intuition, you can't always do it. And that just kind of crushes that genius. So how have you experienced that?
The discernment is by far, I think, my strongest of the two geniuses that I have. And I remember, as we've talked about this, as a kid, my dad even said, "Hey, you've got a really good just intuition. Like always, just listen to your gut and go with it." And so I think looking back, I've always had this well. Sometimes I think it's held me back because I've said, "Nah, it's not a really good idea," and my friends, would go do something really dumb and cool and had fun with it, where I didn't participate because that, hey, this is not a good idea.
Sure.
Little voice, told me not to. But I haven't really, I didn't realize all the weight was on me in this area until we broke this down. I think I was more frustrated that others weren't, picking up on different things and not seeing why ideas they had just wouldn't work through. And you said at the beginning of this whole podcast is that it gives words to what you're feeling, and so I didn't understand that this wasn't just intuitive and natural to others, because to me it made sense, and also I knew that my office manager and my doctor lead struggled with the just trust me, but I didn't understand the why. They struggled with the just trust me. And I didn't understand why they would get frustrated when what I said, just trust me, ended up being right. Because that wasn't part of their, their genius. They don't understand how this gut intuition, how it works, and I don't even know what to call it because it sounds like voodoo. The same way I don't understand why they don't see it the same way. Right? They don't interpret things the same way.
Interesting. And it's so that's got to be a really tough dynamic too, but like another benefit is just like you have words now and you all understand why that's the way that it is, because discernment is so necessary. It's so necessary because it gets everybody on board with like, actually, what are we doing here? Like, what are we moving forward with? And when you don't have that, or when you only have like the one person doing it, it can feel, I'm sure that can feel pretty isolating sometimes, in the sense of like, why do I see something that everybody else doesn't? Or, you know, to put ourselves in the shoes of like what that would be like for your leadership team too. It's like, well, why are you always calling the shots here? And but also, like, what's great about discernment is often if they're the ones calling the shots, people start to realize, oh, down the road this person does tend to be right. And so over time, as you're working with discerners, you start to open up to extending more trust to them going forward, because you actually see down the road they have been proven to be right enough. And so I think time is a big gift when you're working with people with discernment, or if that's in your frustration, because you just start to appreciate it more and lean on it more over time as you see it play out and benefit the team. So that's really cool. Yep. I'm going to talk about what's lacking in your team, the craves and crushes for galvanizing. So a galvanizer would crave reaction, and they would be crushed by apathy. So again, galvanizing is that person who's motivating and exciting. What's great about galvanizing, and why it's kind of a necessary step, is it responds really well to the discernment. And they're going to create the buy-in that you need to actually move something forward and have a team commitment over a project. So when it's lacking, a lot of that responsibility falls onto the discerner to like get people to want to do the thing that we're all deciding to do, but it's not nearly as natural. There's just kind of this necessary, like, you need a character in your office who's just going to be like, okay, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's move forward. And what they really desire is that reaction, to get buy-in from everybody, for everyone to get excited. What they're crushed by is apathy. So when we're all kind of just like, about something. So what's hard is like, I mean, you and I are both frustrated by galvanizing, so we can't speak for, what that's like to experience firsthand. But we can speak for what it feels like to have a deficit of that in our office. You mentioned earlier that you probably had a galvanizer on your staff team at one point, and so I am curious to hear your perspective on galvanizing.
Well, first, as a frustration, trying to motivate people is just nails on a chalkboard. I don't like having to do that. It sucks my energy out of me. Which is exactly what a frustration does. My guess is we probably have some within our broader team that do have this as a genius. And so once we bring you back in later this spring, which we plan on doing, and doing the working genius for the full team, we're going to have to, as a leadership team, figure out how to tap into that individual, whoever it may be, or hopefully individuals, to rally the troops when we are trying to drive some products. Even though they're not on the leadership team itself, it doesn't mean they're not a valuable part of the team. Not everybody can sit in every seat on the bus. Not everybody should. But I'm looking forward to finding out who those individuals are so that we can tap into them. And my guess is when we do, it'll help make their engagement at work, and it'll elevate their experience as part of the work team, because we'll be tapping into their genius.
And they'll be getting reaction. They'll be getting
reaction, and they'll be getting recognition and all the stuff that they need. Yep.
Yes, all the excitement. That'll be great. I'm excited for that. Enablement follows galvanizing. So, and we have a couple on your leadership team. So enablement craves appreciation. I mentioned this before. And that, again, is not recognition in the super exciting sense of like, this person needs to be stood up in front of the entire staff team and we all need to clap for them. Like, that would actually probably drive someone with the genius of enablement nuts. But it's often, it's as simple as just a word of encouragement to someone with this genius. So if you're able, especially someone in a leadership position, I've noticed that has a particular power for anybody, but specifically for enablement because they so crave that appreciation when it's coming from somebody who's a little higher up and takes the time to notice that the enablement person did something and that really helped. If you just simply say that, that just fills their cup. They're crushed by being overlooked. So it's when their contributions go unrecognized and when they kind of just feel like they're operating and they're doing their job and people don't really care. That is what can really start to crush that genius and kind of they start to lose their natural kind of drive to flex and help and support. And so your office manager and your tech lead both fall in this. So how have you noticed their craving for appreciation or just crushed by being overlooked?
I've learned that the one I don't recognize the individual contributions that they've contributed to enough. I also learned that just a broad thank you, appreciate your help, doesn't do as much as like a specific, hey, I saw you do this,
Right.
which created that, and I appreciate it. So seeing the details, they respond better to. They also tend not to respond as well to just like frustrations. So I've learned to try not to really just take frustrations only to them, which is tough because when you're on a leadership team, most of the time you're dealing with problems more than you're celebrating successes. And so, so when I do bring something to them, I try to sandwich it between, positives. And they're probably listening to this, so now next time I do it, they're going to call me out on it. But I want to build them up before I bring something negative, and then I want to leave them with a positive feeling as well. Doesn't mean it's all rainbows and sunshines, but little things that I would overlook because I don't want the recognition. And if somebody tells me how great of a job I did at something, I tend to belittle it, or it just doesn't carry the same weight. But I found really like that, and to your point, much better than bigger things. They hate being called out in front of a group and put on stage. They appreciate the monetary recognitions, but if it's just that, then it doesn't bring a whole lot. They need the one-on-one word conversation from me.
That's really good. It's so funny too because I feel like these people may not even recognize how much they crave that appreciation sometimes. But it's, when you come in contact with this model, it's like, oh yeah, actually I do really need that. I remember I did a training with my staff team several months ago, but I had a couple days before just said something to one of our opticians about like, man, you're really good at your job. Like, that was really cool to just watch you, dispense that pair of glasses. And she brought that up in the training. She was like, actually, you said that to me, and I don't think I realized it, but that really meant a lot. So it's really sweet that, they have those words to just be like, oh my goodness, yeah, like that really does actually fill me up and energize me in a way that I don't even think I realized how much it did, but it really did, and I really need to hear that. So, and it's a great,
That's cool.
Yeah, as a leader, when you're leading a team, and I mentioned this in your training, but specifically in optometry, I think there is a lot of enablement, just because that's kind of the type of person that tends to gravitate towards the job, and so it's just implementing that kind of practice of just affirming can go a really long way. So last genius is tenacity. They crave clarity and they're crushed by ambiguity. So we talked about the list. That's why tenacity loves the list, is they just love, give me all the specifications, everything you want me to do in all the, terrible detail of how you want it done. And that's amazing. They love it. They're crushed by ambiguity. So yeah, it's just it's so funny because the freedom that would absolutely energize an inventor is going to crush the tenacious one. So yeah, that's where it's a big gift to know the geniuses that are represented in your office. I have one of my geniuses is Tenacity, and so I've experienced this. Sometimes it's like, man, I really wish that like when a staff person comes to me with like a problem, I wish I could just like really help you with that, but I would much rather just be told what you want me to do. And so yeah, what's great is just experiencing that in real time and learning that about the people around you, knowing actually which person on my team is going to execute this and get it done and actually do it in a timely manner and really, really well. They're actually going to uphold the standard of quality that I've established for this thing that I want done. So you have
And not only
one.
just,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, not only just upholding the standard, but when you're developing the systems and processes, having somebody who's very, I don't want to say process oriented, but parameter based has been helpful in the development. So incorporating them, I know it's at the end of the problem solving workflow, but engaging them earlier I found has helped with the making sure that we've connected all the dots on in the processes as we're developing it, so that we're not skipping over different steps.
Yeah, that's insightful. Have you noticed with your office manager that she's the one who's going to have an eye for like actually what standards need to be upheld throughout this process?
Oh, for sure. Sometimes a little too much. So when we engaged her too early and I said, hey, I need a flow process on how we're ordering contacts, right? She wanted to first do this, then do this, then do this, and I'm going to be a little bit facetious, but give me a 5-page list of every single step in the process. When I was asking for bullet points of maybe 3 to 5. But as we are developing that, having her insight into, well, if this doesn't get over to here, there's a break in the process. And so, having her at least, have some insights as the flow is being developed to make sure that in key pieces, little bridges don't get overlooked.
Great, and it's that eye for what is being overlooked. That's what this one. It's kind of just that they catch everything. Is what I've noticed about the Tenacity is they're gonna catch what other people miss. I think Tenacity and discernment both are kind of they're your little filters that are actually gonna find those little things that actually would be absent. So
awesome. Well, Sophie, I really appreciate everything that you do and continue to do to help my practice, and I wanted to share this, and again, hopefully be a little bit vulnerable within our team as we're rebuilding the team, as we're constantly looking to improve, because I think it's such an important aspect of team dynamics. If we don't know who we are, if we don't know how each other are, it's really hard to develop the team. And I love my sports analogies. So looking at a football team, just because you've got 11 guys on the field doesn't mean you have the right 11 guys on the field. If we're all 350-pound linemen, it's going to be really hard to throw and catch a ball with guys that all they know how to do is block. Right. On the flip side, if we're all a bunch of 150-pound wide receivers, we're not going to protect our quarterback very well. And so you have to understand each other's strengths, and then beyond that, you understand what that individual needs. Because just because they can perform a task doesn't mean they're performing it all for the same reason. It's kind of like understanding their why, their purpose. So I really appreciate you taking Working Genius beyond the book, because the book's great. I've read it twice, but it still was much harder to apply without a Sophie to really walk us through and validate our insights. Validate how we're applying it and help redirect some of those misapplications.
it's definitely what I've noticed is clarity really does impact ownership, and just when you can extend a resource like this to people and help them understand and bring clarity to actually how they're wired and where they're energized, there's a level of ownership that then exists that just didn't before. And an ownership that you can also extend to different people in your practice, because you know, okay, here's actually an area in our workflow where I can maximize on this person's gift. And so I think that's often what we long to see in our employees, is just ownership. We long to see them, you know, really desire this job and know where they, you know, really contribute to it. And I long to, for every employee at my practice to walk away at the end of the day, you know, feeling fulfilled and feeling like, oh, I contributed something meaningful. And so, yeah, offering this clarity to people, it really does transform how they work and how they feel at work, and how your entire staff team works together, because communication improves. And yeah, it really is. It's a wonderful resource, and you know, obviously I'm biased, but I think everybody needs it. And so I'm really glad to hear that you guys have enjoyed just applying it, and it's been a real joy and honor to work with you. So I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely, and look forward, like I said, to doing it with the broader team this first quarter as we can ramp up. And then from a practice owner standpoint, you know, we hear all the time about investing in your team, and I think things like this are really neat ways to do so, because this isn't about work. This is about the individual, and you know, those who take the understandings can take it and apply it at home with their friends, you know, on their beer league softball team, you know, whatever it is, you can apply it across the board. So thank you very much. We will put your contact information in the show notes, so if anybody wants to reach out and work with you rather, and learn a little bit more. But Sophie, good luck with 2026 and finishing up the remodels that you guys are going through, and all the fun stuff.
Thank you. And like, work it up.